Today, I'm joined by my friend Andy Shirk to talk about his experience as the former president of Beer Nuts and his thoughts on the role of a COO. Andy, welcome to my first LinkedIn interview.
Thank you. Good to be here.
I'm excited to talk to you about your experience and what you've been doing. Just kind of like your background a little bit about just your experience of being the president, what that looked like, how your operations. There's a couple questions as we walk through this. I guess we'll start off. First question is, tell me about how you became president, or tell me about what your experience was, what it was like running an organization that's been around for so long.
Sure. So two questions there. I guess my experience or road to that role was as a college entrepreneur. Had a water company with a couple guys in college, built up and sold it. Then went into the real world and was in commercial real estate, selling shopping centers, mostly enclosed malls, all over the country until about 2008 when the debt market dried up. And took a summer off and was visiting my parents out in Colorado. And my dad said, "Hey, why don't you come help us out a little bit, and sort of consult?" And so I was living in Chicago at the time, and I started traveling to and from Bloomington every week in sort of a consulting role. Started on our farm operation, and then jumped in as first job was really cleaning the basement of Beer Nuts, a basement from a 1940s dairy originally that hadn't been cleaned in many years. So went from a coat and tie to a t-shirt and jeans, and started in the basement. So,
wow.
But from there, kind of over about 3 years or maybe 2 years, 2 or 3 years was commuting every week and doing projects like that, and sort of just project-based work until 2011. I was getting married, and my wife said, "Hey, we should probably, move there because you're commuting every week and we're getting married." And so we moved down, and I became the general manager, and was really sort of overseeing most of the operation. And in that role, had roles such as sort of plant manager, did front of the house, back of the house, stepped in wherever I could and whenever it was needed in the plant, and just about every role at one point or another. And until about, I think it was 2014, I became I think it was April 2014, I became the president after some strategic planning meetings with the consultants who said, "Hey, we need to move Andy into the president's role," which was more or less vacant, and really solidify this and let him call the shots. So that's how it really started within, it's a family business. So I was, and my dad's the 100% owner, but that's really how I got into that role, with the help of a lot of people making good changes and advances within the company. And so that's kind of how I got there. And
so it sounds like you've been always an entrepreneur from college on. Is basically you've always been interested in developing shopping centers and doing commercial projects, learning that process, learning how things are, just basically doing deals and trying to set things up operationally in that way. And then
I really came from an operator's perspective, coming in, just having operated a small business and then working on a small team in the real estate world and with our client teams, as an analyst first, before I was really a broker. And then just kind of having that whole perspective as an operator, understanding early from, I think, my analyst experience as well as my experience in the plant, so that everything matters to everything else.
Yeah. And I like the idea. It's neat to see somebody that's started from the ground floor and kind of worked and learned and tried to figure out from everyone's perspective. You were cleaning the floors, and then you moved all the way up to general manager and up to president. I think it's so important for people to understand how companies run, how people interact, what's important in a business to be more efficient. And it sounds like you started from the very, ground floor and learned a lot from all the different aspects, especially in Beer Nuts, of what it takes to run a company.
Yeah, literally the basement. But that experience, I think, going through and then getting to know other people in other industries really has transferred over well. And I feel like I have a general understanding of how most businesses operate, or don't operate well, or do operate well. So, yeah.
So with your experience as you grew into that role and as you met more people, how did you see like from other operational types of side of things from other companies or other people? Did you feel like you're people that are like, wow, I really want to do it that way, or I don't want to do it that way?
Yeah, being so the company's 70 years old at this point, and so when I came in, 55 years old, and a lot of things needed updating, and so I really enjoyed going to other facilities and other companies and seeing how they do things and saying, okay, how do we implement that? And instead of we weren't making small steps, we could make a big step and make a big gain quickly. And so, yeah, I just love learning about other businesses because I know there's a way to transfer some knowledge, to add some efficiency into our operation or the BRS operation or whatever company I'm working with. So.
So how did the technology, so I assume technology and like even looking at other plants and what they have advanced or new things that are out there, just equipment and generally just overall things. Is that something that you spent a lot of time with, like kind of looking at that and saying, okay, how can we improve our efficiencies in our own plant based on what we've seen? And then from that, part two would be is like, okay, here's the cost of these things. What was that a kind of like, wow, we're going to take this risk to kind of move towards a different way of doing things?
Yeah, and that's really where the conflict lies and why I'm not there anymore. But the ability to, from day one, it was new software is needed, but going up to just the recent past, the local labor challenges plus I think we doubled our base wages in about 3 years. That the inflationary pressures really drove automation as a solution, and it's they're big projects, they're expensive, and they sort of narrow your flexibility because you got to really figure out what are you going to sell the most of, and can you do just that one thing on this one line without the flexibility that we're comfortable with. But the technology's come a long way, and it's there. And so there were I got way into it and saw I had a whole new look on our whole operation, our pipeline, rather than just one packaging line or one production line.
Right.
So I think in my head, I built a whole new plan.
Now with your footprint on that, with the whole new, like building a whole new plant in the footprint your organization has, was that a challenge to say, okay, I got this footprint and now I got to put in new technology, and how does it fit in the line? How do we switch from one product to the other?
There's it started with the 1940s dairy, and then we built more or less the operating plant around it. And so, but it was built in the 70s. So there's 50 years old, and there's different, food safety requirements and mindsets and thinking. And, but it was built well and designed well with plenty of space. So the capacity is there to do it all. And not only are these is the new equipment more efficient, it's smaller. So we could, definitely increase our output dramatically within our existing footprint.
What was one of your biggest things, challenges, scaling, employees? Of course, COVID, we ran into that. I mean, talk to me about as you brought in the new equipment and you're scaling to say, my understanding too is from the scaling part is we're going away from more storefronts to more in stores to more online. Was that more of a scaling like you saw where you're trying to move your product a little bit differently?
Yeah, we saw some opportunity. So we saw the digital opportunity. I'm going to pause right here. Hang on. I'm the toy with the squeaker. So we saw the digital opportunity and really pushed hard on that. And given the kind of the family dynamics within the business, that was an area I could operate without too much interference. And so pushed hard at trying to figure that out. Spent a lot of time with Amazon, Shopify, and getting things set up there. It was challenging though. Selling food, direct to consumer is inefficient. And so the prices are high, but we were able to meet some customers that didn't have a retail option nearby. And so it was a good thing, but I didn't think, wasn't necessarily our best thing. So,
but
it was nice to be able to service people who we couldn't get to otherwise. But on the other side of that, a lot of the scaling of the business had to do with new grocery accounts, new mass retailer accounts. We picked up Walmart in my career or in my time as president, which became a big influence on how we operated and driving efficiency. And then recently we got into Walgreens, and then there's I'm thinking regional grocers like Food Lion in the Southeast we added, and we're local we got back into Jewel, we're in Schnucks, we're in just about every regional grocer in the Midwest and Southeast, including Publix. And going west too. So it was really just pushing our focus back to larger sales. I like selling trucks, not cases and pallets. So, yeah.
Well, I think as we're talking here just about operations and things and that nature of looking at the overall how to do that, knowing that you're taking risk, you're saying, okay, let's see what his online presence would be. Does that fit how we do things? Is that going to be most cost effective? Because everyone thinks, well, it must be cost effective to do everything individually to people through Amazon. And it's like, okay, this is where it's driving our costs.
Yeah.
How did you, when you looked at those costs, I mean, how much for yourself as the president, were you looking at costs? Did you have someone else, an operations person or a finance person coming back to you and saying, okay, here's where this is going well, here's where it's not meeting our expectations? Did you?
Yeah. Team effort. Yeah, it's always a team effort. So we were, I think most helpful, we implemented EOS in 2018, I believe. And so we had, just our systems were pretty strong in communication and execution at that time. And so we had a specific team, meeting the challenges of e-commerce. And the financial side was really important and a challenge when you're 60% of your costs on an Amazon sale goes to Amazon.
Yeah.
And so we're, we had trouble sort of stomaching that until we did it and things moved. So, but yeah, it's just weird rationale, I guess, that you have to, that our customers have to decide whether they want to pay that much, how much they want our product. But
right.
So leaned on good people. I always say, you find good people, get them in the right seat and get out of their way.
Yeah.
And let them run. And that's what we did. And that really accelerated the growth of that department.
And I assume that a lot of when you talk about getting the right person, the right seat, that's always been a very common phrase a lot of people use. And just real quick, when you mention EOS, is for people that maybe don't know what EOS is and what it's done. And then I'd love to talk more about something else that you're being involved in too.
Sure. Yeah. You want me to comment a little more on EOS?
Yeah. If you could just say, what is EOS and why was it important to you, or what did it help you frame to find the right people, right seats to be more operationally efficient, and also knowing that, hey, this is a great idea, this is a great area, but this is not where we should be putting our time and money into.
Sure. So EOS stands for Entrepreneurial Operating System. I now am my facilitator coach on a system that's evolved out of EOS, but called Bloom. But they're both systems to help you operate your business more efficiently. And Bloom specifically is a communication and execution system that really does well because of prioritization of the most important things that need to get done. We're able to cut through the noise and focus on the big stuff, and you accelerate the speed of progress the more you can do that.
So explain to me, for the perfect company, individual, why would someone want to go to Bloom? What is it? What will help them? Is it a certain size company? Is it like operations only? Does it help them with the hierarchy of who they do? Tell me a little bit more about that.
So the system on the whole, I think can work for any size company. The only qualifier is, when you hire a coach, probably you'd be about a $5 million company or larger. But Bloom is actually going to address those that aren't there yet. Provide some support there as well without a facilitator until you're in the position to use one. But sorry, your question was really.
It was just more saying, okay, who is Bloom for? Sure. It definitely seems like filling a little bit here is just talking about, it seems like it goes back to when you first started, is like you're very interested in operations. You're very interested in how things are run, how things are. There's a growth period. There's also a phase where things you're trying to figure out. So my assumption is, tell me more, is Bloom is that group that's like, hey, I want to scale. We're still trying to figure things out in our company. We might not be at 5 million yet, but we know we'll get there. We just need the help from
Yeah.
a organizational standpoint. We need help.
Yeah, so for years I was searching for a way to better manage, you know, activity within the business, and I'm a pretty big reader or listener to books, and that's how I kind of got to these operating systems. But they, you know, Bloom really is just it allows, it's industry agnostic. Doesn't matter what industry you're in, but it's really focused on the leadership team, getting them aligned on a big goal for the company, and then communicating that throughout the organization, based on a series of consistent meeting structures, agendas, and timelines. And so it's you know, it's a proven system that's, you know, and an evolution of many proven systems that just help entrepreneurs sometimes get out of the way of their business, or really just get what they want from their business, whether that's time or profit, or more revenue, depending on.
Yeah. I mean, I think a lot of it is, I think as my experience working with companies and dealing with operations and with C-suite people is like, there's so much going on as running a business. As you are, you know, president, and you've been involved in other companies and other things you've been involved in over your years, it's like, you're busy working, you're busy trying to figure out, how do I keep people, how do I keep my employees, how do I keep them, you know, functioning and moving? How do I keep this business going? Especially if you're developing, you know, as a snack or a widget or something out there. It's like, how do we keep on moving forward? And I always feel like an outside source of having someone help you, walk you through those steps that maybe you didn't have time to, because you're, as they always say, you're building the airplane in the air. You're basically trying to do that. And you're like, oh my gosh, what do I need to do? It's like, oh, I need to do this. I need to fix this. I need to build this as I'm flying in the air, and hopefully we don't crash. And it's like, so you're trying to do that, but then you need someone else that will give you that assistance of saying, hey, I have these tools that will help you build this faster or a more efficient way. And I assume that's kind of just because that's what you like to do. This is you know, a great thing that you're, you know,
Yeah, it's a ton of fun. I'm having a great time with it. Yeah, and so are my clients, which is fantastic. But it's really just, you know, you spend your time as a leader in the business all the time, but when are you intentional about getting out of the business with your leadership team and saying, okay, now let's look ahead 90 days. Let's look back 90 days. Let's look ahead 90 days. And also let's look ahead at our huge goals, our 3-year goal, our 1-year goal, and sort of working out what should be our next 90 days.
Right.
So, and then you can go back into the business for 90 days. You've got some priorities, quarterly priorities for that quarter, but you go back in and you work your tail off, and you come back up again for air and take the big picture approach with your team. You go back at it again. And that time frame and that consistency really accelerates progress for an organization.
Yeah. So how does do you look at operations and finances, like your CEO role, CFO role, if we want to put a C-suite thing, and a CEO role? Do you feel like all of those are, depending on the size of the company, important to have, to where they're all communicating or actually understanding each other's roles, to where you're like not just being so focused on CFO, not focused on COO or CEO? It's like you have a visionary, but then you have all these people that are just like moving things and trying. They need to truly understand the whole structure of your company.
Yeah, that's one of the requirements of those quarterly meetings, is that you have to get out of your role, and your weekly meeting. You come in and to those meetings, and it's there's no rank. Everybody's on the same page, whether you've got the owner and the CEO or anybody. You're on the same rank. And so the intent is to act like a strategic advisor to all departments, regardless of your role and experience, and to ask the questions or suggest the things that you normally aren't. You may not know what you're talking about, but at least get the ideas out there. Another big part on the back end of Bloom that's different than a lot of systems is the team health part, so that you're comfortable, you know, being vulnerable with your teammate and saying, hey, I don't think that's right. I love you, but I don't think that's right. Like, help me understand it, or let's work together to find a better way of how we're doing whatever it is. So
how do you, that's interesting you say that. It's like always the fear, I think, in any company, no matter what the size of it is is the fear of like telling somebody, hey, I don't think that's the right thing, especially if it's either a C-suite person or somebody that else is at a different level of management or different level where they're at in the company. It's like, does those barriers break down because it's like you're trying to have them where you can connect and say, hey, I'm going to say this to you. And you're not trying to disparage the person. You're not trying to position yourself in a different spot. You're just saying, hey, for betterment of the company, this is what we need to do. And what we're doing right now maybe is not the best.
Right. Yeah. And so that's where that team health component is important to create the comfort. And every session we start with sort of, we highlight our wins, and we also throw out all the issues on the table so that let's get it all out there, and then we're going to work through it. And so, but the team health practices that we do in every meeting are really, the analogy that I thought was pretty good is it's something you're never done with. And so you're just sort of chipping away different parts of, the rust that may be on the group, and teams are always evolving and new people are coming and going. And so it's that the practice of just always thinking of how can we make ourselves more known to the rest of our team so that they can know us better and work better together. And so it's more about letting yourself be known than getting to know your team.
Right.
And that it has, it sounds simple or maybe fluffy, but it works. So, and sometimes when I've doubted some of our approaches, my mind gets blown because they go so much better than I ever expect. So.
Is it different, would you say, for generations, depending on the generation that's involved in it? If it's like multi-generations of people, not necessarily it's just like, okay, Gen Z, Gen X, all the different gens.
Yeah, you're right on. I think the older generations have thicker skin and different mentality around it. And but those that I think are most successful are people who are always learning, and they've learned that they know themselves well, and they want their teams to know themselves well, and they kind of get it. But I think it's a lot easier with the younger generations, but I think it works at all levels. It's harder with older folks.
Yeah,
in my
I think the key thing that you're saying is always wanting to learn. The investment, I think it's always hard if you start a business and you invest in it when you're young, and as you get older and it continues to succeed or just maintains, it's always that, do I want to invest? Not just money, it's time, it's reading. Like you said, you love to read, you love what's out there, what's going on, to stay with the pulse of what the world or just what organizations are doing. And I think sometimes, like you said, I think people are, depending on what generation or your mindset is, like, we all have to continue to learn. There's always something for us to be taught or understand. And I think interesting, the younger generation is like, hey, we're more open to this. What's going on? How do we all work together and not be so siloed? And I assume that's what you're trying, as you are doing this, and what you've learned from stuff you've done in the past to what you're doing now, is like, it's always something new, surprise. Like, even yourself, you're saying, I don't know if this is really going to work. And you're like, oh, wow,
that worked really well. Yeah.
It worked.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'd say it's just that you made me think it's the always learning is part of it, but always challenging your own position, I think, is the other part. Regardless of where you stand on anything, I think you always have to be challenging it. And I think in the leadership environment and the C-suite environment, you have to be open to those challenges from other people the same way you challenge yourself. And it's hard, but that's why it's important to work with your teammates to really understand each other and know how to communicate best to each other when you have something difficult to say or share. So.
Yeah. No, I think there is so much we can learn from others and from things out there. As we start wrapping this up, is there anything else that you like, hey, this is something I've learned recently, or this was important? I don't know if there's anything we can touch on COVID, we can touch on those things, or it's just more like, what was the big lesson you learned in the last couple of years that really helped you, say, hey, this is what I want to do?
Yeah. So a lot of things just popped into my mind. Obviously, I'm in a transition, building a new practice and growth coaching. But the two things popped in my mind. One is I learned that, and this comes straight out of Dan Sullivan's Strategic Coach, but always having a bigger future. is a mindset that I really love having. And as I've gone from thinking I was going down this one road, as I was going to buy beer nuts and all that, and that didn't work out.
Mhm.
When I step back and look, I'm so much more excited about all the opportunities that are there rather than that one opportunity I'm so focused on. And so the concept of always having a bigger future and always growing into something, no matter what your age, is a good one. And I think that had that been the case, and the owner of Beer Nuts, who's my
Yeah.
dad, that would have helped him, and it would have helped me too. But whatever, we moved on. But the other side of that is, or the other thing I was thinking of that you said, just something random in my strategic coach meeting last week. This guy really challenged the term of culture. He's like, "What is, He's like,
Yeah.
how do we don't define culture well?" And he's like, "I think it's kind of garbage." Like,
Mhm.
and he was sitting right next to me, really stuck. And what really makes a good culture, and thinking about, starts from the top.
Mhm.
That it really comes down to things like, what are your core values and how do you use them, and
Mhm.
and are your people aligned? And he sort of really simplified it in a long explanation. But
Yeah.
culture is not ping pong tables in your break room and
Yeah.
happy hours. It's having a group of people that like working together
Mhm.
because they're aligned internally, personally and professionally. So
Yeah.
I don't know. It's just something
Yeah.
random that popped into my head. So
No, I think it's we've seen such a phase of culture that we, can define culture years ago when Amazon and Google and all these groups, basically it's like, we're gonna have ping pong tables, we're gonna have pizza, we're gonna have this. It's like a party and beer and all this stuff, and it's like, this is awesome. And everyone else is trying to emulate that. And then you go through that, and it's like, this is great. We're showing that we look like we care. Not saying they didn't, but it's also too, it's like, but also now you're gonna be here working a lot more hours because I have all the services here. I have your dry cleaning, I have this, this, and this. And it's like, wait a minute, now I'm here 80 plus hours. It was like, these are nice amenities, but it's like, this didn't culturally, did this really make me better worker, better person? How am I effectively looking at the bigger picture, what we're trying to accomplish?
yeah,
And I think that's some of it, is trying to say that there are things bigger than what we've done. So you being where you're at as president of Beer Nuts, it was a great experience. You learned so much, but also, so you're taking that learning ability and what you learned, and now you're taking it to the next level to saying, now I can take this, what I've learned, and how I can walk through this with other people and saying, hey, here's what I have. This is what I can show you and then guide you through that. And I think that's where it's really neat to understand, is like, there's so much more that's bigger than us. We're more than just a title. We're more than just fill in the blank. It's like, we have so much stuff so many things we have learned. How do we share that? And I think that sounds like what you're trying, your next step you're doing in your life, in your
yeah.
journey. Like, hey, I'm
I,
taking this, and I'm going to show people, but also to, here's guidelines to how this breaks down to people to learn, a different way, and, make the
yeah,
company better. So,
yeah. I can. It's yeah. It's sharing my experience and what I learned, and helping implement a system to
yeah,
help others achieve their dreams. Really,
yeah.
their entrepreneurial dreams. So,
And that's great. I think that's, again, going back to your entrepreneurship spirit from when you first, got out of college and did different things, is like, this is something you want to do. You're like, you want to learn, you want to build a future for yourself, but also for other people to be able to do the things that is out there. And that's exciting to see that you're doing that. And it's something that I've lived by for a very long time, is just, hey, how can I help other people? How do I show them there are ways to do things, and there's also ways not to do things. And we're all in a very learning experience. So,
yep.
this would be something I'm curious, as time goes on, love to come back with you,
Sure.
talk to you some more about, like, how's it been going?
Yeah.
Where are things at? What did you learn? What have you learned from other people, companies, and the experience that you're having? And so, I mean, it's exciting to see that you're continuing to share who you are and your vision to other companies that maybe you weren't able to, being at one company. Now you can do this for multiple companies at once. So.
Yeah, yeah. It's exciting and it's a ton of fun, and I love sharing, what I know to help others
Yeah.
succeed. I love seeing others succeed. So,
Before we wrap up, one last
yep.
thing. Any books or anything like that you're like, someone needs to read this? Or, I mean, I'm putting you on the spot here.
Yeah, no, well, I'm like a chapter into an AI book. I forget the name of it. Let me pull it up though, because the AI stuff going on is just mind blowing.
Yes.
And how do you integrate it into your day to day effectively? It's called AI as your teammate,
Okay.
by a guy named Evan Ryan. It's like a 2 hour audible book, but it's so far super interesting. So
No, I continue to look into AI. I've talked to clients that are like, what do we do with AI? And of course, it depends on the company you're doing, but some people are streamlining, like, well, maybe it does this and this. Is like, okay, let's step back a bit. It's like it is growing, and it's the new advancement that we haven't seen in a long time. I mean, AI has been around forever, but it's making big advances in the last couple of years. And trying to, as I'm talking to clients, they're trying to think, oh, maybe it can take care of all these things. Like, it can do some of that. But no, this would be a great conversation in the future to discuss more about that. And after you listen to the or read the book, just curious how you see that affecting companies and how they perceive things, their workers, the people that work with them, and just how they proceed even to all the different parts of the company. How is AI going to affect that? So anyways, that's another story, another long conversation. But no, I appreciate your time. Thank you. This was great. I hope this was something that you was thought provoking.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Again, thanks LinkedIn community for listening to this with Andy Shirk and myself, Mike Straza, as we went through this. This is something I'm going to be bringing out every couple of weeks, interviewing a thought leader, a person who has been through it, is still going through it, and still learning. So thanks again for listening.